In early 2026, as the football world shifts its collective gaze toward the upcoming World Cup, one specific name dominates global curiosity: Erling Haaland. He is not merely a football player, he is a physical anomaly. A striker who doesn't just run, he brute forces his way through elite defenders like a machine built entirely for war. But when the world watches him, they ask the wrong question. They ask how he trained. They should be asking where he was forged. To understand the monster on the pitch, we must look far beyond the manicured grass of the stadium. We must step into the brutal, unforgiving, frozen wasteland that engineered his DNA. Welcome to Norway, a narrow, jagged ribbon of rock at the edge of the world, carved and violently torn open by 40 separate ice ages. For thousands of years, this was not a place meant for human survival. This was the ultimate crucible, the breeding ground of the Vikings, a breed of men and women who didn't just survive the impossible, they ruled it. Nature here killed the weak. Only the absolute strongest lived to pass on their blood. Yet, today, the descendants of those brutal warriors have pulled off the ultimate historical paradox. They have built a nation so unimaginably wealthy that it holds nearly 1.5% of the entire world's publicly traded stocks. A trillion-dollar empire. And yet, they live by a deeply hidden, unspoken cultural code that strictly forbids anyone from acting like it. From the hyper-advanced cities to the remote Arctic fortresses keeping the world's backup seeds alive for the apocalypse. This is a deep dive into the hidden history, the shocking wealth, and the mind-bending culture of the modern Vikings. Let's go beyond the horizon. When you stand at the edge of Preikestolen, also known as the Pulpit Rock, your brain screams at you to step back. It is a perfectly square monolith of granite plunging 604 meters straight down into the black waters of the Lyse Fjord. There are no guardrails here. There are no safety nets. A single misstep means a 12-second freefall into nothingness. In any other country, a place this dangerous would be fenced off, restricted, and heavily monitored by authorities. In Norway, it is simply considered a nice place for a weekend walk. Further north lies Trolltunga, the troll's tongue, a jagged sliver of ancient rock thrusting out into the void, suspended endlessly above the abyss. To reach it requires a grueling, punishing trek through unpredictable mountain weather that can drop 30 degrees in an hour. But the Norwegians do not hide from this violence. They crave it. There is a word in the Norwegian language that does not translate cleanly into English. Friluftsliv. It translates literally to free air life. But its actual meaning is a deep, psychological conviction that being outside in extreme weather is the natural state of a human being, and that being indoors is merely a temporary inconvenience. They are raised on it. Norwegian babies are routinely left outside in their strollers to sleep in sub-zero temperatures, with the collective understanding that the freezing air fortifies their lungs. There is a national saying embedded in their minds from childhood: there is no bad weather, only bad clothing. This is not a hobby. It is a mandatory psychological conditioning. The geography of Norway is vast, intimidating, and lethal. By forcing themselves to confront the freezing winds and the terrifying heights, modern Norwegians keep the ancient survival instincts of their ancestors alive. They do not fight the extreme nature, they merge with it. But the mountains do not just stand in silent observation, they bleed. Norway possesses the most concentrated collection of massive, violent waterfalls on the planet. This is Vøringsfossen, a monstrous torrent of water, free-falling nearly 200 meters into a dark, narrow canyon. The sheer kinetic force of the water slamming into the bedrock generates a permanent cloud of mist, a chaotic microclimate born of pure destruction. In the ancient Norse mythology of the Vikings, these colossal waterfalls were not merely geological features. They were deeply spiritual. They were believed to be the tears of the gods, or the very veins of the earth, pumping lifeblood through the stone to keep the mountains alive. Look at the Seven Sisters waterfall in the Geiranger Fjord. 7 distinct streams plunging down the vertical walls, shrouded in eternal mist. The Vikings believed that spirits resided in the deafening roar of the falls, demanding respect and sacrifice. Today, that ancient power has been harnessed in a different way. While the world burns fossil fuels, this terrifying aquatic power is the secret engine of modern Norway. Over 90% of the country's electricity is generated by hydropower. The very water that once instilled religious terror in the hearts of the Norsemen now silently powers one of the most advanced digital economies on Earth. They took the tears of their ancient gods and turned it into limitless energy. Nature here is not just a backdrop, it is the ultimate battery. If the waterfalls are the veins, the fjords are the fortress. The Geiranger Fjord, recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a masterpiece of geological violence. 200 kilometers inland from the open sea, the Earth simply splits open. These are the longest and deepest fjords in the world, some reaching depths of over 1,000 meters, surrounded by cliffs that rise just as high into the clouds. If you laid the Empire State Building on its side at the bottom of these waters, its peak would still be completely submerged in darkness. This labyrinth of water and stone is what kept the early Norwegians safe. For centuries, Europe was a battleground of shifting empires and invading armies. But no foreign army could conquer Norway, because no army could navigate this hellish, fractal coastline. The fjords acted as a massive, impregnable natural wall. The water is too deep to anchor a fleet, and the cliffs are too steep to launch an amphibious assault. The people who inhabited these dark valleys lived on farms perched at impossible gravity-defying angles. Some farms were so steep, so completely isolated from the world, that parents famously had to tie ropes around their children's waists so they wouldn't accidentally fall thousands of feet into the freezing water below while playing. They did not view themselves as prisoners of this landscape. They viewed themselves as untouchable. The geography bred a profound sense of isolation, self-reliance, and an impenetrable psychological armor that the Norwegian people still carry to this day. Further north, jutting out into the violent currents of the Norwegian Sea, lies an archipelago that looks like the jagged teeth of a drowned monster. The Lofoten Islands. Even today, with modern technology, a winter storm in Lofoten is a terrifying experience. 1,000 years ago, it was a death sentence. Yet, this nightmare landscape was the staging ground for the most feared maritime raiders in human history. The geography of Norway was so starved of arable land that the Vikings had no choice but to look outward. They turned the ocean into their highway. But what made the Vikings so uniquely terrifying wasn't just their ships. It was their profound, disturbing psychological connection to the apex predators of the wild. Before a battle, the most elite and unhinged Viking warriors would enter a self-induced, hypnotic state of rage. They stripped off their armor, believing themselves completely invulnerable, and draped themselves in the skins of bears and wolves. They were known as the Berserkers. The word literally translates to bear shirt. In this trance, they howled like wolves, bit down on their wooden shields until their teeth bled, and fought with an insensitivity to pain that paralyzed their enemies with sheer psychological terror. They believed the spirit of the animal had possessed them. The raven, the wolf, and the bear were not just animals. They were extensions of Odin, the All-Father. When you look at the raw, jagged peaks of Lofoten today, you are looking at the exact landscape that demanded such madness. To survive a world that wanted to kill them, they had to become the monsters the world feared. But aggression alone does not build an empire. Logistics does. Tucked away on the southwestern coast, sheltered by 7 mountains, sits the city of Bergen. The historic Bryggen Wharf, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a mesmerizing row of tall, slanted wooden buildings painted in deep ochres, reds, and yellows. For centuries, this was the most important port in Northern Europe, and its immense power was built entirely on a single brilliant survival mechanism: food. The Vikings possessed the greatest ships on Earth, but a ship is useless if the crew starves in the middle of the ocean. In an era centuries before refrigeration, the Norwegians perfected a biological miracle. Every winter, millions of Atlantic cod migrate to the freezing waters off the coast. The locals would catch them, gut them, and hang them on massive wooden racks in the sub-zero winter wind. For 3 months, the freezing air would pull every drop of moisture from the meat, rendering the fish as hard as solid oak wood. This was stockfish. It has 0 fat, 80% pure protein, and virtually no expiration date. A piece of properly dried cod could be stored in a damp Viking ship for over a decade, and simply rehydrated in water to form a highly nutritious meal. This was wealth in a solid, physical form. It allowed the Vikings to cross the Atlantic and reach North America 500 years before Columbus. And centuries later, it was shipped across Europe, feeding armies and empires. Before they found oil, before the trillion-dollar funds, the foundation of the Norwegian Empire was built on freezing winds and dried fish. A 1,000-year diet that conquered the seas. As the centuries passed, the Viking axes were traded for steel, concrete, and dynamite. But the war against the landscape never ended. The geography of Norway actively resists human infrastructure. To connect this fractured ribbon of land, modern Norwegians had to execute feats of engineering that border on absolute madness. Look at the Atlantic Ocean Road. This is not merely a highway. It is an insult to the ocean, a ribbon of concrete and twisting bridges that completely ignores the coastline, leaping directly over the violent swells of the Norwegian Sea. During winter storms, massive rogue waves crash violently over the tarmac, threatening to drag vehicles into the abyss. Yet, the road holds. It is a serpentine monument to human defiance, constructed in a place where the ocean clearly demands absolute control. Inland, the Flåm Railway operates on a gradient so terrifyingly steep that it is considered one of the most extreme rail journeys on the planet. Cutting through solid bedrock, climbing from the deep bottom of the Fjord up into the freezing heights of the high mountains, twisting through tunnels carved entirely by hand. To navigate Norway is to navigate a battlefield. They didn't just build roads and trains, they bored through solid mountains and bridged roaring oceans. The bloodline of the monster did not disappear. It simply evolved. The brute force that once swung an axe is now the same force that drills through the Earth's crust. Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of the modern world. In 1969, beneath the freezing, deadly waters of the North Sea, Norway struck oil. Not just a little oil. They found one of the largest offshore hydrocarbon basins on the planet. History tells us exactly what happens when a small country suddenly discovers unimaginable wealth. Look at Venezuela, swallowed by hyperinflation. Look at the Middle East, where deserts were paved over to build towering palaces, golden skyscrapers, and fleets of diamond-encrusted supercars. The economic literature calls it the resource curse. It destroys nations from the inside out. But Norway did something absolutely terrifying to the global economic system. They refused the curse. In a display of national restraint that defies human nature, the government passed a mandate declaring that the oil money did not belong to them. It belonged to the future. They took the profits and locked them away in Nordstatsuthidr, a sovereign wealth fund. Today, that fund is worth over $2 trillion. It owns roughly 1.5% of every single publicly traded company on Earth. Apple, Microsoft, Nestle, Norway owns a piece of all of them. Divided equally, every man, woman, and child in Norway is effectively a millionaire. And yet, if you walk the streets of the modern Viking capital, Oslo, you will see no palaces. The Prime Minister takes the subway, the man who manages the $2 trillion fund bicycles to work through the snow. Why? Because of a deeply ingrained psychological protocol known as janteloven, the law of Jante. It is an unwritten, fiercely enforced cultural code that dictates 10 simple rules. The core philosophy is this: you are not to think you are anything special. You are not to imagine yourself better than us. If a Norwegian flaunts their wealth, buys a flashy car, or brags about their success, they are met with a freezing, devastating social silence. They are economically capable of buying the world, yet they actively choose to live in modest wooden houses. They are the quietest billionaires in human history. Far above the mainland, deep inside the Arctic Circle, lies an archipelago of pure ice and apex predators. Svalbard, a place so extreme that it is illegal to leave the main settlements without carrying a high-powered rifle, because the polar Bears here outnumber the humans. For months during the summer, the sun simply refuses to set. The midnight sun rolls across the horizon in a permanent, hallucinatory twilight, warping the human sense of time. But Svalbard holds a secret far heavier than ice, buried deep inside a frozen sandstone mountain. Engineered to withstand a direct nuclear strike, asteroid impacts, and catastrophic climate change, lies a brutalist concrete structure. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, the Doomsday Vault. Inside, kept at a permanent -18°C, are over 1 million distinct crop samples, billions of seeds from almost every country on Earth. If World War III breaks out, if an incurable blight wipes out global agriculture, or if civilization completely collapses, this icy tomb holds the genetic backup of humanity's entire food supply. It is perfectly fitting that the nation possessing the ultimate wealth also holds the ultimate responsibility. The descendants of the Vikings, who once burned foreign villages to the ground, are now the sworn protectors of the Earth's final lifeline. They have built an insurance policy for the apocalypse, quietly waiting in the eternal cold. As the Earth tilts away from the sun, the northern territories of Norway descend into the polar night. For over 2 solid months, the sun never breaches the horizon. The landscape is swallowed by a deep, eternal blue twilight. In this absolute darkness, above the city of Tromsø, the sky ignites. The aurora borealis, solar radiation slamming into the Earth's magnetic field, creating a haunting, silent ballet of green and violet fire. The ancient Norse looked up at these lights and believed they were the glowing armor of the Valkyries, the divine warriors descending from the heavens to carry fallen heroes to Valhalla. Today, science explains the magnetism, but the visceral awe remains exactly the same. The darkness of Norway is not empty, it is alive. When you look at Norway today, you are looking at a masterclass in survival. They took the most hostile, jagged, and unforgiving rock on the edge of Europe, and they did not just tame it, they absorbed its nature. They took the violence of the waterfalls and powered their future. They took the brutal isolation of the fjords and forged an unbreakable psychology. They dug trillion-dollar wealth out of the lethal oceans and hid it away in quiet humility. Are the Vikings truly gone? No. The bloodline remains completely intact. The monster on the football pitch, the silent billionaire on the bicycle, the engineer drilling through mountains, and the guardian watching over the Doomsday Vault. They are all cut from the exact same frozen stone. They don't swing axes anymore, because they don't have to. They have already conquered the world, and they did it in absolute terrifying silence.